Chapter 29, Bolero of Fire. Link gasped as convulsing waves of agony spread through his body like a fire. It tore through every muscle, bone, and organ, consuming him until it was all he knew. He was momentarily blinded, and the world was strangely silent. If not for the pain, Link would have been sure he was dead. Then his vision returned, blurry and incoherent. The shapes became sharp enough for him to see the shower of debris that crashed around him, lashing at his tunic, his arms, and his face. Link rolled and threw up his shield protectively. He pulled his knees to his chest, waiting for the chaos to end. If he screamed, he never heard it. It was a while before Link dared to move, shoving his shield aside and rolling onto his back. He nearly fainted at the waves of excruciating pain this caused. His limbs were bleeding from dozens of cuts, and he winced with every gasp of air. He choked on the powdery mist of stone and dust. It was so thick he could hardly see Navi as she dashed to his side. Link was glad to see she was unharmed, although he could not say the same for himself. She almost crashed into his nose. Her mouth was moving, but Link could not understand what she was trying to say. I think I broke something, he groaned as the pain in his chest flared. More like everything. His ears still perceived no sound, even with Navi bobbing up and down frantically in front of him. He shook his head as she nearly whacked him again. I can't hear you. Navi vanished from view, and Link tried to sit up. The pain was blinding, and the effort drained him faster than he anticipated. Only his right arm responded to his meager efforts. His left arm throbbed with even the slightest attempt to move it. Link glanced back at the temple. His memory was clouded, but he knew he should be looking at a set of 5 pillars and an awning carved out of the rock face. Only the red rose stone edifice was gone. In its place was what looked like a landslide similar to the one he climbed over to get to the temple. Darunia? The last thing Link had seen before he ran was Darunia charging towards Volvagia. Both had been close to the explosion, much closer than him. His heart sank as he considered whether or not they could have survived. But even as he considered the possibility, he knew it was unlikely. He wasn't even sure how he'd managed to survive, not with the bits of debris and broken pillars that lay tossed around him. Why hadn't Onyx warned him about that? Surely Darunia would have told Onyx to pass on a warning. Darunia had not seemed overly shocked to see Link, or perhaps he had been distracted in his efforts to avoid being devoured by Volvagia. Link's mind was far too clouded to contemplate whether Onyx ever received any such instruction. As his senses returned, Link became more aware of the agony in his ribs and limbs. The throbbing in his ears and the searing pain in his left arm were the worst. He looked down at his injured arm, blood running thick along its length, and winced at the sight of it. Sucking in a breath, and dreading what he'd see, Link rolled up the sleeve of his tunic to take a closer look. There was something white, protruding from the wound. Upon closer examination, Link realized what it was. Bone. He fainted. Link moaned as he came around, opening his eyes to reveal a ceiling of smooth stone. He was lying on a bed of rock with his head propped against a sleeping roll. It wasn't very comfortable, But that was the least of Link's concerns. He blinked wearily as his brain worked furiously to try and work out where he was. Judging from the ceiling, it was some kind of cave. He could hear somebody humming, and realized his hearing had returned. The source of the humming was a tall man in flowing blue robes, who was busily poking a fireplace carved into the rock. Link wondered if he was in the Goron city. Only the rooms reserved for Hylian dignitaries had fireplaces, and they were built at the top of a settlement amongst a honeycomb of tunnels. When he took in the other details, such as the tapestries on the wall, he guessed that must be where he was. He only wished the Gorons hadn't dispensed with the mattress. Not many Hylian nobles would like a bed of stone. At least there was a window. The view wasn't much. It overlooked the mountain's rugged slopes, which were now an eerie orange as the sunlight struggled through a blanket of clouds.
Link?
Navi was resting on the stone table by the fireplace. She flew over to his side the moment she saw him stir.
Link, thank goodness you're awake!
The man by the fireplace chuckled, putting the fire poker back on its rack.
Ah,
he said pleasantly.
At long last. It is good to see you well, hero of time. How are you feeling?
Who? Link started, before realizing what the man had just said. How do you know who I am? The man chuckled again.
I know a great many things. Fear not, for I mean you no harm.
That was hardly a reassuring answer. Who are you? Link asked, propping himself up on his elbows. The man's red hair, blue robes, and slightly lopsided grin was familiar, but Link couldn't piece together where he'd seen the man before. A shuffling noise directed his attention to the door as two Gorons lumbered into the room. Brother, Gemite said. His voice might have lacked any of its usual enthusiasm, but Link still recognized the Goron. I thought I heard you talking. It's good to see you awake. The other Goron introduced himself as Boran.
I said he would not be out long,
the grinning, blue-clad Hylian said, sounding immensely pleased with himself. I don't mean to be rude, but who are you? Link asked. The man still hadn't answered his question. And how did you heal me exactly?
We have met before. Do you not remember me?
The man was still smiling, tapping one of his two brightly colored pointed shoes on the floor. Link shook his head.
I go by many names, but you may call me Halvard,
the man replied, his unwavering smile becoming unnerving.
I brought you to the Goron city so I could see to your injuries.
Link glanced down at his arm, his stomach forcing itself into a knot.
You needn't worry about your arm. I was able to see to it that you are healed, he said pleasantly. With a little help, of course. It is fortunate that I came when I did, since Gorons don't have much knowledge of Hylian physiology. Meaning no offense to you two.
The Gorons grumbled, but said little more, doubtlessly unperturbed by Halvard's comment. You still haven't told me who you are, Link said insistently, still unable to put a name to the man.
You remember the happy mask salesman? Navi asked him, don't you?
Link was so baffled, he barely noticed Halvard's small chuckle.
It has been a while since anyone called me that. Yes, quite a while indeed.
That still didn't ring any bells, and Link just shook his head. I'm sorry, Navi quickly came to his rescue.
You wanted to buy a mask to make you invisible, in Castletown, remember?
Link vaguely recalled the experience.
So much had happened since then that the memory was faint, almost as though it had occurred in another lifetime. He sat upright, pushing himself slowly upright. This made his vision swim, and he braced his hands against the stone. Yes, you were most unamused when I tried to sell you a bunny ear mask, Halvard said with another small chuckle. Oh, that, Link thought. He remembered the man's shop now. How could he forget the shop's elaborate decor, or the masks displayed upon its many shelves? He definitely hadn't forgotten the man's attempts to sell him that bunny-eared mask. I still think you would have looked cute in it, Navi said, grinning faintly. Yes, I'm sure I would have looked terrifying, Link said dryly. Very terrifying, Navi replied with an equal measure of sarcasm. I'm glad you're okay. There was something off about Navi's humor. Her tone suggested as though she was trying very hard not to bring up an unpleasant subject, but also knew that she must. Dread rose in Link as he guessed what was troubling her. Link's chest tightened as he recalled the Goron chieftain plunging his hammer towards Volvagia's skull. The temple's antechamber exploding moments later. Where is Darunia? Link demanded, then wished he hadn't asked. Navi's faint smile melted away, and the Gorons averted their gaze. Halvard was quiet for a minute. His smile faded, albeit slowly compared to Navi. It would be best if these two explained, he said. Now, if you excuse me, I must go to the kitchens and see that the Goron cooking your food hasn't spoiled the stew. Link's mind was too busy pondering Darunia's fate to even contemplate how peculiar it was for a Goron to cook. Halvard got up from the fireplace and left the room. Gemite spoke as soon as the man was gone.
There's been no word since Darunia collapsed the temple's entrance. We think he's dead. The bottom dropped out of Link's stomach. A part of him expected it, but he still did not want to believe it. Gemite kept speaking.
The entire mountain mourns for him. We found you amidst the rubble, with Halvard's help. He arrived just after you did.
Was he following us? Link didn't like the sound of that. Even if Halvard had just healed him, it was still suspicious. Did you find him? Link was going to ask if they found Darunia's body, but that thought would just be affirming what he refused to believe. Darunia is dead? The Goron chieftain could survive anything. He was tough, and he had endured through 7 years of Ganondorf's reign. Gemite growled solemnly.
I am sorry. I know you were his sworn brother. We all bear this grief for him. If I'd known about the plan to destroy the temple entrance, I wouldn't have told you to go that way.
The letter said to use the tunnels. Now Link knew why.
It would seem our dear brother Onyx was aware.
Boron's voice was dangerous. Aware of what? Link asked, frowning in confusion, until his gut twisted in a nauseating sensation. The Gorons looked at each other uncomfortably.
Should we tell him?
Gemite asked Boron.
Darunia would have wanted us to. Link is a sworn brother. We owe it to him.
Tell me what? Link asked, almost angrily.
I questioned Onyx after Halvard brought you to our city. He knew of Darunia's plan. One of my brothers, who returned from the temple, said they saw Darunia order Onyx to tell you not to access the temple except through the tunnels. He admitted that he deliberately withheld that information,
Gemite said. Link's blood froze, and Navi gave a loud exclamation of shock.
What? You mean Onyx tried to have Link killed?
She asked. Why? Link asked, his voice a feeble croak. I never did anything to him. You did not, Gemite agreed solemnly. He blamed you for the death of Jasper 7 years ago. They were kinsmen. Link stared in numb horror. Onyx tried to have me killed? I didn't want Jasper to die. I never wanted that. I'm sorry, said Gemite. I assure you, he will be punished. Jasper's death wasn't my fault, Link said, a heavy weight settling over his chest. We know, Boron said, trying to sound gentle. Ganondorf was the one who set the trap that killed him. It was your bravery going into that tunnel that prevented any more Gorons from being killed that day. Trying to have a sworn brother killed was dishonorable, Gemite growled. He will be punished.
Do you realize Onyx almost doomed the entirety of Hyrule?
Navi asked.
Out of an act of vengeance?
They don't need to hear it, Navi, Link told her, not unkindly.
I only meant to...
Navi began in protest, but Link shook his head. Don't. Link held her gaze, and she resigned with a sigh. He did not want to be reminded that he was the hero of time. The goddesses must have been mad when they made him the chosen one. A single life was fragile and so easily lost. Amongst the Kokiri, this idea had been completely foreign. Only now was Link beginning to understand the enormity of it all. Sheik and Impa had been right. In order to protect the flow of time, Time's wheel wove the lives of others around him, like threads in a pattern. Just then, Halvard came back with a large bowl of stew. Link's appetite quickly returned at the smell, but when he caught a whiff of the odd smell, his anticipation dwindled. Dodongo stew, Gemite announced proudly, as though he'd prepared it himself. We might be rock eaters, but we must still care for those who pass through our city. I'm sure it's delicious, Link said, hesitantly shoving a spoonful of the stew into his mouth. To his dismay, it tasted like burnt leather, and it was just as tough to chew. This is good, he tried to say, in between nearly choking upon the leathery hide. His sword belt would have probably been more edible. Is it not to your liking, brother? Gemite asked, anxiously awaiting Link's verdict. Link could see the desperate desire to be a good host and decided he wasn't going to be rude. No, it's delicious, he gasped, eyes watering as Halvard offered him a water skin. It just went down the wrong way. When he finally washed the meat down, with some difficulty, he handed the water skin back. It was then that he noticed Halvard had a familiar tattoo on his forearm. A weeping eye. Managing to gulp down the last of the water without spluttering in surprise, Link settled his tray down on the stone tablet. You're a Sheikah? He asked curiously, his eyes lingering meaningfully on the mark. Is that how you found me? In hindsight, the man's obvious emotions should have been a clue. Link expected some affirmation, but instead, Halvard's beaming smile vanished, and he scowled. It was a frightful expression that almost made Link recoil. I am, he said, his voice hard. But I prefer not to think of myself as one now. What do you mean? Link asked. Given the man's obvious dislike of the subject, it was a question better left, but Link's curiosity got the better of him. Halvard just looked away.
I preferred a simpler life to that of a sheik and assassin, he said quietly. It was no way to have a family. So I left. The king took it rather hard, but he was deposed the same year by his estranged son. King Nohansen was gracious enough to pardon my transgression.
Is your family in Kakariko?
Navi asked.
No, he replied stiffly. They are a long way from Hyrule now.
I thought there were only 2 Sheikah left, Lady Impa. The "you idiot" look from Navi was more than Link needed to realize he'd gone too far. Halvard jerked as though struck, and Link almost flinched as the man turned to face him.
How do you know her? How do you know her?
His voice was harsh, and there was a cold look in his eyes that hadn't been there a moment ago. It was too late to worry now, so Link drew a breath and answered, I snuck into Hyrule Castle. She threw me out. It wasn't exactly true. She'd escorted him out the gate after his rather botched attempt to sneak in. Link swallowed at the intensity of Halvard's gaze. The man seemed to be weighing the truth of his words. Then the fire left his eyes.
Impa and I have not spoken since we last parted ways 6 years ago. She told me about you, of course. How she didn't know whether or not you'd survive the siege of Castletown.
Link felt an uncontrollable chill and shivered.
There was a mask that, in the right hands, could have defeated Ganondorf.
Halvard continued.
I wanted to control it, despite my previous failures to do so. She thought it too dangerous. She ordered it destroyed.
What mask?
Navi asked, clearly baffled. Halvard stared vacantly at the fire, not meeting their eyes.
It does not matter.
His tone left little doubt that he would say no more on the subject. How did you even find me? Link asked after another minute passed in silence.
I saw you arrive in Kakariko Village. It's not every day someone walks into town bearing the mark of the goddesses on their hand. I knew it was no fake from the moment I saw it. I followed you, and only just arrived at the Goron city in time to hear the explosion,
said Halvard. That still doesn't explain why you were following me, Link pointed out. Halvard's voice was almost mysterious as he answered.
The Gerudo are looking for you, and they seem almost as determined to find you as they do Hyrule's dear Princess Zelda. I came after you because I needed to give you a warning.
What warning? Link asked.
Your task is known to me, courtesy of Impa, and I can tell you that you are running out of time. Ganondorf has found an artifact beneath the temple in Castletown, known as the Gate of Time,
Halvard explained. A gateway? Link asked, not sure he was following. What is it exactly?
A portal, if you like. If he learns how to use it, he can travel back in time.
Back in time? Link took a moment to realize the ramifications of this, and his heart sank. You mean back in time so he can rewrite history?
Yes. I believe Ganondorf intends to send his armies back as far as the moment of Hyrule's creation, so he can slay the goddesses.
Is that even possible? Link asked. His head was suddenly spinning. If Ganondorf succeeded, time itself would be rewritten. Written so that he would scribe the pages of history instead of Hyrule's creators.
It is possible, Halvard said grimly. The demon inside the soul mask I found was once a god. But it drew so much shadow magic. It went mad. In the end, I was able to stop it with some help. You have to find the rest of the sages before Ganondorf opens that portal.
How long do we have? Link asked weakly. The remainder of his stew lay forgotten on his tray, his appetite gone.
By itself, the gate cannot send you far back in time, but with a powerful magical artifact, it is possible for it to do so.
You mean something as powerful as the Triforce?
Navi asked.
Halvard nodded. Yes, all 3 parts of it. There are some wishes the Triforce cannot grant, and turning back the wheel of time is one of them.
We're safe, so long as he doesn't find Zelda. Or me. He had to warn Impa or Zelda somehow. Link's mind was racing furiously as he thought of what to do. Some voice in the back of his mind gave a skeptical murmur at Halvard's story. There had to be a way to find out if Halvard was telling the truth. He couldn't think how. If this artifact was hidden beneath the Temple of Time, it was well out of reach. Then we have to hurry, Link said. I have to get to the Fire Temple, and then find Impa.
We can help you get there, Gemite said. The other Goron elders agreed to let me take you.
How do we get there? Link asked.
There is a passage through the tunnels. It's sealed at the moment, and will only open if someone plays the Bolero of Fire, said Gemite.
The what? Link asked, not enjoying the feeling of being completely clueless.
It's a simple song, which I can teach you. If you think you can remember it,
Halvard told him.
I can always remind him.
Navi jumped in.
Splendid. In that case, I must be going soon. The Gerudo have been watching my every step. Although I managed to slip out of their sight, I must return to the village before they realize I'm missing.
Why are they watching you? Link asked before he could stop himself. It was a little odd, he thought. He knew Ganondorf hated the Sheikah, and had wiped out the remaining Sheikah who'd survived the schism that crippled their race. It struck him as odd that Halvard had been able to remain in the open for so long. A horrible thought occurred to him then. One he didn't even want to remotely consider. Was Halvard working for Ganondorf? He dismissed the idea. If that were true, the man wouldn't have just saved his life.
You look troubled, boy. Still feeling well, do you?
Halvard asked. Link shook himself out of his thought. He hadn't realized he was frowning. No, it's nothing.
Well, in that case, we should move soon. There is just one other quick matter,
Halvard said pleasantly, as though their conversation was nothing out of the ordinary.
Something, or someone, has been trying to break the seal on the Shadow Temple. I have not seen them, though I have kept a watchful eye on the seal.
The Shadow Temple? Link had heard of the ancient Sheikah Temple. Most people thought it was just a haunted necropolis, but they all agreed on one thing. It was cursed. Yes, there are unspeakable things in there, things which cannot be allowed to escape. Halvard's voice was mysterious, and Link didn't like it at all. What are they exactly?
One does not speak of such things, dear boy. All I can say is that if they escape, things will get a lot worse. Promise me that you will warn Impa when you see her?
Link swallowed. His mouth felt as though it were full of dust. I will. Navi was giving Halvard a very distrustful look as Link finished his stew. He barely tasted it now, and had to force himself to eat. He'd need his strength soon enough. Once he'd finished, Halvard borrowed his ocarina to teach him the Bolero of Fire. It was a simple song, a melodious tune that might have been the introduction to a dance if it weren't so short.
Don't forget it, will you?
Halvard said, giving Link back the ocarina.
We won't,
Navi said.
Good. Then I must be off.
Halvard was smiling pleasantly at them again.
If you will excuse me. Good luck. No doubt you will need it.
Thanks. He would need it. Taking his leave, the masked man gave them all a polite bow
and vanished into the corridor beyond.
Are you ready to leave?
Gemite asked. Just a minute. Link still had to get his gear organized. His sword and shield were propped by the bed, as were his satchel and the remainder of his belongings. He quickly donned everything on, and checking his various utensils were secure, he followed Gemite out of the room. The tunnels were a maze, and it was a wonder Gemite and Boron knew where they were going. Link fell behind the pair as they navigated their way through the twisting tunnels and down broad stairways. Torches lit the way, and there was little in the way of sound or activity. "Where is everyone?" Link asked.
Mostly in the mines or the forges, Boron answered. Most of the Gorons are too afraid to rebel again, so they've gone back to the mines, hoping Ganondorf will ignore us, so long as we're obedient.
The disgust in his voice was palpable. Link didn't blame the Gorons for being reluctant to rebel, when their last attempt had ended with several of their kind dead, including their leader.
Some of the elders think Darunia a fool for rebelling in the first place. They say he placed too much faith in outsiders. Meaning no offense,
Gemite said quietly. None was taken, Link answered.
If we can slay Volvagia, perhaps they will think differently,
Gemite said optimistically.
They will sing songs of your deeds when you do.
Link was beginning to think that perhaps some of the Gorons had the right of it. Expecting him to slay a dragon the size of Volvagia was putting more faith in him than he had in himself. Shaking off the thought, he kept up with Gemite's pace and continued onward. The tunnels threaded their way into the heart of the Goron city, where Link once again beheld the smooth stone terraces. Except for 2 lone guards by the entrance, the same place where Link had met Volvagia long ago. There was nobody else here. Link entered another passage that weaved its way beneath the mountain, and down yet more stairs, until he was sure they were at the bottom of the city. He kept peeking through doorways, hoping to see some signs of its occupants or what was inside. Soon, he could hear the belting of hammers on anvils, as Gorons worked within their massive forges. A part of him was curious to see what a forge looked like, but Gemite steered him away. Then, they entered the older tunnel where Link beheld carvings that were worn with age and covered in the dust of centuries. Bits had flaked off over the years, and other sections looked as though someone had attacked them with a chisel. It was getting steadily warmer too, Link realized, by the time they rounded a corner and came to a halt before a stone door decorated with a dragon. It was a wonder the walls weren't melting.
This is the door your friend mentioned,
Gemite said.
We had to block off all the other entrances until we could find a way to rescue the others. No doubt the elders still grumbling about the problem now,
Boron said with an exasperated shake of his head.
They'll probably still be grumbling when we get back. Preferably with Volvagia's head.
Link's stomach twisted itself in knots, and even Gemite looked appalled.
Charming,
Navi muttered dryly, trying not to dwell on Boron's words. Link played the Bolero of Fire. With a sound of stone being scraped upon stone, the door slid open and vanished into a recess within the door. Ahead, yet another winding passage twisted upward until it opened up into a cavern that was lit with a warm red glow. The blast of heat that hit Link made him think he'd just walked headfirst into a furnace. "Well," he breathed, "here goes." The hot air swallowed him as he reached the end of the passage. Gemite gave a contented sigh as they reached the opening of a cavern. Behind them, the stone door rumbled shut, sealing them in. Link swallowed, not enjoying the sensation of being trapped, and scanned his surroundings. A red stone wall stood on one side of the cavern, while the dais sat perched precariously upon a precipice. It looked like the ledge had extended out further before the rocks had collapsed. Link got as close to the edge as he dared, close enough that he could see the angry red glow of the lava below. Link doubted Impa's ring would be powerful enough to save him if he fell. Even if the lava didn't kill him, the fall would. "It's definitely hot in here," Link said, stepping back from the precipice. "I feel like I'm going to cook in a minute."
"I think this temperature is quite agreeable," said Gemite.
Yeah, you would.
Navi responded. "Are you going to be okay in this heat?" Link asked her.
I will be fine,
She replied.
fairies can survive in really hot temperatures.
As if to emphasize, she flew up into the air with arms outstretched and took a deep breath before coughing.
Can't say I like the smell much. Good thing you have that ring, or you'd probably be suffocating by now.
She was right. There was a strange metallic smell in the air, mixed with a nauseous concoction of fumes coming from the lava. The Gorons did not look remotely worried. Allowing the Gorons to lead, and realizing he left Sheik's map in Epona's saddlebags, which at least Navi could have read, Link made his way towards an archway at the far end of the cavern. It led into a small chamber with passages that branched off in different directions. According to Gemite, 2 of the corridors led to the catacombs, also where the captured were imprisoned, and the third, which he pointed to, would take them to the entrance and Volvagia. Gemite pointed to another passage that led to an old shrine dedicated to Volvagia's namesake, a dragon known as the First Sage of Fire. They didn't head that way. Instead, Link headed for the catacombs to find the missing Gorons, and the small party threaded their way along the winding corridors of red stone, enchanted torches held in sconces, guiding their way through the heart of the stone labyrinth. Link found the bodies of several Bulbins and scavenged a bow as well as a quiver full of arrows. He couldn't help but feel a little indifferent about the bodies, or the fact he was stealing from them. He refused to allow himself to dwell on it, knowing that doing so would only distract him from his task. After wandering through several empty corridors, Link found himself hoping that Ganondorf had completely withdrawn his forces. Unfortunately for him, it was too much to ask for. As he came to the end of a 4th empty corridor, 2 Lizalfos appeared around the corner, taking him by surprise. Thankfully, the Lizalfos were just as startled. They cried out in alarm, one quickly leaping to the attack, the other proceeding with more caution. Link thrust his shield up to deflect a jagged blade. With a quick swing, he flicked the reptile's weapon away and thrust his blade into its throat. He ducked sideways as the other Lizalfos came close to cleaving its sword through his neck, and then Gemite cracked a fist over its skull. It went down in a wretched heap. "Thanks, Gemite," Link said, panting from the sudden encounter. Gemite nodded.
"Anything for you, Dodongo Buster."
He scratched his chin, cast a thoughtful look at Link, and then said,
"Should I say Lizalfos Buster instead?"
There was a touch of humor in that question. "No, Dodongo Buster is just fine," Link replied. Ideally, he would prefer not hearing that name either, but he doubted he would stop Gemite from saying it anytime soon. I guess it's preferable to Hero of Time, at least. They arrived in the catacombs, long passages with grave niches, carved out of the rugged rock walls. Some of the alcoves were filled with the ancient remains of Gorons. Others bore the remains of what appeared to be dragon skulls, decorated with inscriptions and symbols that bore little meaning to Link. Many of the inscriptions that adorned the alcoves were faded, the names of their occupants now long lost. "How old is this place?" Link wondered aloud.
"It is many centuries old,"
Gemite answered, gesturing to the alcoves.
"The shrine to the first Sage of Fire was built first. The rest was built around the shrine. There was peace between Gorons and dragons for a time, but then the territory was greatly reduced by invaders. When we allied with the Hylians to produce armor in return for maintaining our own rule, many dragons turned on us. Those that didn't felt betrayed, and all but several fled in disgust. This temple and the bones that you see are a reminder of those events.
So Volvagia is a descendant of those dragons?
Navi asked. Link was only half listening, still very much aware that there could be something lurking in the shadows. He listened with half an ear as Gemite continued.
Without a mother dragon to tend to the nest, the Goron was saying, most of the remaining eggs died. Volvagia was the only one who hatched,
Gemite said, his voice solemn.
After we defeated the leader of the dragons, who fought us, the rest left for the distant lands. Darunia was named in honor of the Goron, who brought an end to that conflict.
Link wished he could read. He wanted to know what the writing carved into the wall said. Reminding himself of his task and the possible danger ahead, Link kept himself focused on his task. It wasn't until the next corridor that they came across more Lizalfos. Most of them tried to flee rather than fight in such close quarters. Navi suggested using his bow, while Link still had distance between them and himself. Reluctantly, Link agreed. Exhausting himself before reaching Volvagia, who might still be alive and very angry, would not be wise. As the first Lizalfos fled, Link notched an arrow and let it fly. The tip pierced the reptile's throat, and it went down with a crash. A second arrow struck its companion's shoulder. Link cursed. He'd been aiming for its neck. Hissing in pain, the beast swung around and brought its sword to bear. Quickly, Link let a third arrow strike its face. By now, the final Lizalfos was almost at the end of the passage. Link let another arrow loose, and felled the beast before it reached the archway at the end of the catacombs.
The prisoners should be up ahead,
said Boron.
Ganondorf meant to feed them to Volvagia, along with the elders, so nobody would rebel.
I can only imagine how Darunia reacted to that threat,
Navi said dryly.
Not well,
Gemite replied with a small grin.
Darunia was never one to respond well to threats.
You're becoming a little sarcastic, Navi, Link noted.
Someone has to keep us sane,
Navi quipped. Did Sheik or Impa put you up to this? Link asked. Navi gave him a sheepish grin.
No, not at all.
Raising an eyebrow, Link almost replied before a guttural snarl caught his attention. A Lizalfos rounded the corner and charged. Link cursed. Unable to ready his bow in time, he abandoned it and went for his sword. Whack! A fist collided with the side of the lizard's head, and it crumbled like a sack. Eyes blazing, Boron had jumped to Link's aid. Thanks, Link breathed. Forgetting all thought of conversation, Link kept a lookout for anywhere Lizalfos might be able to hide. He wasn't sure if they were that smart, but it was better not to chance it. 3 more Lizalfos stood at the chamber beyond the catacombs. As they entered the cave's small confines, there were yells of delight and shouts of,
"It's the Dongo Buster!"
Other Gorons yelled warnings or suggestions as Link charged. He thrust his blade straight through the torso of one Lizalfos. It gurgled and fell. A second Lizalfos snarled and jumped through the air, sword arcing down towards Link's unguarded back. The youth spun around, shield bashing against the blade in a shower of sparks. He cleaved his sword through the beast's abdomen and turned to see Gemite pummel the last Lizalfos with a vicious blow to the skull. The slaughter was over so fast that Link felt physically sickened by it. Trying not to stare at the dead lizards, he walked over to the cage closest to him. It was barely big enough for the poor Goron inside. It sat crouched, with its head scraping the top of the cage. "Do you know where the keys are?" Link asked. The Goron pointed to the Lizalfos behind Link, and he spotted the keys on its belt. Boron quickly retrieved them, and together with Link, he quickly freed the imprisoned Gorons. The freed captives thanked Link, with many attempting to slap him on the back, which Link deftly avoided.
Well, that leaves Volvagia,
said Navi, once the initial outburst of noise from the Gorons died down.
Are there any other prisoners?
The other Gorons gave various answers of no,
shaking their heads, and Gemite voiced their answer.
This is everyone. Now we just have to deal with Volvagia, so he can't threaten us again. Hopefully. The dragon's buried, and killing it won't be difficult.
Hopefully.
Navi repeated with an air of skepticism.
Knowing our luck, he is not going to be a happy dragon.
Gemite. I can take you and the others back to the city, Link said. You don't have to come with me.
We want to come,
Gemite said. Link was aghast. No, he wouldn't risk it. If Volvagia has recovered, it might be best to let me handle him, said Link. You told me he's already killed some of your people.
Which is why we must avenge our kin,
said Boron.
Let us help you.
No, it's too risky, said Link. The Gorons grumbled irritably amongst each other, clearly not happy with this idea.
I don't think you'll be able to make them, Link,
Navi whispered. I don't want anyone else to die because they followed me, Link said. His voice cracked as he recalled the spear plunging into Mito's stomach. And then the lightning bolt that almost killed Soraya. I can't let anyone else die.
We are warriors, Link. If Darunia is dead, it is our duty to avenge him and our kin,
Gemite said. He didn't call me Dodongo Buster that time. Link looked at Navi, returning her sad gaze.
Let them come, Link. They have seen their fair share of battle. It won't be like before,
she whispered. Like the forest temple, you mean?
Besides, you will need us to guide you through the passages, unlike us. If you get lost or stuck, you can't survive by eating the temple,
Boron added.
Is that sacrilege?
Navi asked.
Well, yes. But what are you supposed to do if you get trapped in here?
Boron asked.
Has anyone ever done that before?
Navi asked.
Not that I know of,
Boron replied, before turning his black eyes to Link.
Will you let us come with you?
Link nodded, and with 7 Gorons in tow, they marched through the passages of the Fire Temple towards Volvagia. With a gigantic dragon and an enormous explosion distracting him, Link hadn't had time for sightseeing before. Now, the sheer size of the cavernous room took his breath away. It was as big as the great Deku Tree's meadow. The walls were richly decorated with murals of Gorons. There were scenes of Gorons fighting, drinking, and wrestling. Other murals depicted the mountain folk crafting weapons, while others danced amidst a parade of drums. Several more depicted a battle between the Gorons and a dragon with a crown atop its head. The reliefs closest to the entrance were blackened, scorched, and damaged, with cracks and chips marring the stone. Volvagia was there amidst the rubble, still partly submerged beneath the rock. Link approached cautiously, walking towards the dragon with his sword drawn. His hands were clenched so tightly around the blade his fingers hurt. Is he dead? He stepped over the bodies of numerous Lizalfos, many suffering from obvious blunt trauma.
Is it alive?
Gemite whispered as they came close to Volvagia. Link shushed the Goron and listened. Faint and barely audible, he could hear Volvagia's rumbling breaths. He was still alive. It would be easy to just run over and slay him now. Too easy.
What's that?
Navi whispered, flying close to his ear.
In his scales, just behind the head.
A blood-red crystal was embedded into the dragon's hide, no bigger than a Goron's fist.
That must be how Ganondorf is controlling him, or reviving him,
whispered Navi.
I'm guessing. But it's definitely dark magic, whatever it is.
A groan ensued from somewhere beneath the rubble, near where Link spotted the handle of a hammer. A few rocks tumbled loose from the debris as something moved beneath them.
Somebody is there.
Navi whispered.
They're still alive.
Darunia!
Gemite exclaimed.
He's alive!
Gemite,
Navi hissed.
are you trying to wake that thing up?
Wings buzzing in agitation. She pointed at Volvagia. Gemite mumbled an apology just as the dragon let out a loud snort. Navi spun around, eyes widening, as the beast's slow, rhythmic breathing changed. Several Gorons groaned softly, including Boron.
Too late.
Volvagia's eyes snapped open. Only feet from the dragon's head, Link froze. The dragon's eyes burned like the depths of a furnace, and a deep growl rumbled through the temple.
Volvagia was awake.